Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network and the home of the Headspace Game Review. We are the podcast that helps you get your head in the game.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 162, Games for Halloween, and a personal chat with the Mega Meeple. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining me. It is only me this time. I have 3 games for you that will suit your Halloween needs. We are releasing this podcast a day early on Halloween so that you can prepare yourself if you have a gaming group that you're getting together to celebrate Halloween while the other kids are doing trick-or-treating. You're downstairs at the gaming table doing your thing. Or if you're playing solo and you just want to get that sense in your life, I have 3 games for you that will fit various aspects of those needs. Looking forward to getting to that. And also looking forward to talking with the Mega Meeple, Thomas Grogan. So you guys know I have been wanting to get more Dice Tower folks on here. Tom stepped up. He said, yes, I'd love to join you. And he has a very interesting story on his podcast, the Mega Meeple. He did an episode that was a lot like the one that I did, which was a personal chat, talking about, personal struggles, being really honest about, what goes on in a personal life, but in a positive way. How gaming kind of has come in and helped him turn his struggles around. So I wanted to have him on to kind of go through that a little bit. I'm drawn to that stuff. I'm drawn to really inspiring stories. So I wanted to have some time to talk with Tom. And we do that. We do that for about 45 minutes near the end of the episode. And Tom is on the episode this week because he's my scary man. He has a YouTube channel, a little bit dormant at this point, but I think he, at any point he could fire it up, where he reviews horror movies. I guess I've come to associate Tom with, horror and scary and all that kind of stuff. So here he is on Halloween, but not a Halloween type discussion. It's very real. I'm hoping that, whoever listens that far will have something to resonate with and will be inspired. So as I do with all of these episodes in which I talk about personal chats, I make sure that I put gaming content up front, give you a nice big slice of gaming so that if you just want to listen to ENGN for gaming goodness, then you got some stuff to chew on and you can come back next week. That is perfectly fine. But if you want to keep on listening, then I invite you to do so, and I hope that you get something out of it. All right, but before we get to all that, we're going to get to Liz in the Liz We Trust segment. It's really Liz this time. I promise it's really Liz this time. That was a blip where Mike stepped in and talked about Oathsworn. That was very funny, actually. Didn't even bother to change the intro, outro mentioning Liz. But Mike stepped in for a week. Thank you so much, Mike. Mike Kelly from One Stop Co-op Shop. But Liz is back to tell us about another awesome Kickstarter that she is perusing.
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to encourage your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. Today I want to talk about Spire's End, a solo or cooperative card game for 1 to 2 players. Spire's End is clearly a passion project. It's a first-time game design by a graphic designer who loves the game books of the 80s. So expect a card-driven, nostalgic adventure with streamlined gameplay and a very impressive artwork. If you love choose-your-own-adventure games and are looking for a new one, then Spire's End may be for you. A base game pledge is $30 plus shipping, and the campaign ends on November 16th. Happy gaming.
All right. Thank you very much, Liz. And now we go on to 3 games that are themed around the Halloween motif. So these games will be Skulk Hollow, Lifeform, and the expansion to Robinson Crusoe that hit earlier this year, Mystery Tales. Skulk Hollow is designed by Keith Matika, Eduardo Baraf, and Dustin Faust, published by Pencil First Games. This is not a scary game. This is not a game that you are going to play specifically to create that scary Halloween mood. It's a very, very lighthearted game. However, it is called Skulk Hollow. It is Halloween. Think skulk around. Yeah! I'm making it fit, and it's going to fit just great. Okay, it is a 2-player dueling battling game. Highly asymmetric, where one person will be the guardian, which is a big natural beast that is trying to keep the land free of all civilized influence, and the other is a civilization of fox creatures called the Foxen, very, very cute little creatures, and they are just trying to be left alone. So of course they have conflicting goals and they're going to come into conflict. It is based really on a video game from the PlayStation 2 from about maybe 10, 15 years ago called Shadow of the Colossus. So it's one of those huge seminal games that if you are a video gamer, you know of Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, I'm really surprised it hasn't been kind of iterated upon and like multi expansions or whatever it is. Shadow of the Colossus was a game in which you played one character, and all that character did was ride a horse a lot. You rode a horse a lot through grass fields, didn't do much. But you were on your way to defeat 12 different giant bosses, and I'm talking giant bosses. The idea behind Shadow of the Colossus is that they were so big that you just climbed all over them. And you had to, crawl up their calf and their back and their arms, and you were looking for sensitive spots on the different pieces of their body, and you were going to just stab them over and over again. That's how you defeated the monster. It gave you that definite sense of David versus Goliath. I mean, in a legit way of, oh my goodness, this thing is gigantic and it could kill me in one swat, or it could, pick me off and throw me all over the place. So it was a really cool game. And so this is the first board game that I've seen that has tried its hand at putting this on the tabletop. So does it succeed? Let's get into really, really basic gameplay. On both sides, it is a card-driven game. So the Foxen are going to play 3 cards a turn, and the Guardian is going to play generally 2 cards a turn. And then depending on the different Guardians, there's always one Foxen. You always play the Foxen if you're the little guys, but there are different Guardians. So depending on that, you play 2 cards a turn. The cards are two-sided. You can play either the top or the bottom whenever you play a card. And depending on who you are, there's going to be different commands. So each of the monsters have different decks. So if you're the Foxen, you can move, you can summon more creatures, you can unleash range attacks. The biggest thing, though, is you can leap onto the back of the creature. The creature has a sideboard, which is only for the Foxen to play around on, and it does that Shadow of the Colossus thing where you're climbing on the knee, climbing on the arm, climbing on the leg. And if you take one part out, then you limit the options of the big guy. So it can no longer throw if you injure its arm, that kind of thing. Then, the big guy is obviously doesn't take it lying down. Generally more powerful attacks of, it can do an attack and kill a thing outright, or, build up a little bit of power and kill every creature in a little zone. It's a 3x3 grid, very, very small. So that's it. It's card play. It's back and forth. It's tactical. It's, the little grid that you're going to be moving around in. There's no victory point here. Whoever can mash the other side, if you're the Guardian trying to either complete some kind of goal or beat the leader of the Foxen. And if you're the Fox, you're just trying to take that Guardian down. All right, so I mentioned the video game, Shadow of the Colossus, and it gets into what I'm calling the thematic headspace that this game wants to put you in. This game wants you to feel that David and Goliath struggle, whether you're on one side or the other. If you are the Foxen, it wants you to get the feeling of crawling on this creature and getting wiped out, but, sacrificing some Foxen in order for another Foxen to come in and jump on the creature. It really wants you to feel that, I'm going to get dominated by this thing, but I'm holding up on my chinny chin chin, and I'm going to make my attacks and I'm going to do my thing. And if you're the Guardian, it wants you to feel powerful, and it wants you to feel big. It wants you to feel like when you do an attack, you are mashing and you are just crushing, and you're doing things that are impactful. You're doing them slower because there's less card play. But when you do that thing, it's very, very impactful. So does it succeed in doing that? What I'll say is that the system is very tight. So I've played this game a bunch, and I've played this game in therapy too. I'm a psychotherapist. I work with kids who are, 13 to 18, and a lot of them are gamers, and I play this. And it's actually been really fun to help. Let's say if I'm playing the Guardian and the other person is playing the Foxen, it's really helpful to kind of play up the idea that they're the underdog and they're overcoming big odds. And that's been really cool for me to kind of help people kind of give the message of, you may be scared in your real life space, but in this space, you can be this little person that is powerful anyway. That's part of therapy, and helping them, if they can get it in that little space, maybe they can transfer some of that feeling into the bigger space. It doesn't work as a one-to-one. It's not like I've played a game of Skulk Hollow and now I can get over my social anxiety. That's not how it works. But it's nice to be able to give a kid a break from their constant messaging of the world is a big scary place and I have no agency in it. No, that in this space, in this little space, you are these little guys and they can take a giant creature down. And getting back to that thematic headspace point, I was really able to help a kid create that. I imagine if you're a parent of a child who's playing this game, you can really help them do that as well. And you can flip the odds where maybe they perceive a parent as a big boss thing, right? Kids perceiving parents like a big boss monster they can't defeat. Okay, you're the boss monster now. And you are taking your parent down. I mean, there's so much that you could do in terms of like the mental space of playing with this, and it delivers. It really lets you get into that, big versus little, and it does that for the most part. The one thing I'll say is that I almost wish it did it more, and this is how I mean. The original Shadow of the Colossus game was very cinematic. I mean, once you got to that creature, well, even approaching that creature, like, you saw it in the distance and it just saw it grow and grow and grow as you got closer to it. And then, you got the cinematic music and, it just felt like a giant drama. And this game doesn't quite feel that way. It's very tight in terms of mechanism, in terms of hand management. You only get those 2 actions per turn as the creature, so you can't do all that much. What you do is impactful, but you do sometimes it's not impactful. Sometimes you have to kind of draw back and draw your cards. But the action economy is really tight, and the damage economy is really tight. Every game I've played of this has been very close to the end, which is a great thing. You don't want blowout wins, but I'm wondering if that very tight damage structure came at the expense of like a wow factor, like a pop. Playing this game sometimes, I almost wish that I had some kind of big power, like kind of in the back that I can use once per game. Like, okay, I like an I win button, so to speak, but that you don't access until later in the game so that, you can actually play it. In a lot of games, that comes with like a crit effect, so you roll a dice. There's no dice in this game. Maybe it needed it, maybe it didn't, but that's the whole point of having dice in a game. You get that, wow, I just hit for double damage, or I just did something that I didn't want to do before. There's no like kind of wild swings, but there are some with like wild swings. Okay, I'm definitely winning, and this person is kind of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It feels like this is kind of like both sides are marching towards whatever the defeat condition is, and then whoever just gets there first wins. I almost wish in a game like this there was kind of more swinginess, which is a weird thing to say because that's an insult for a game, right? It's too swingy. Well, in this game, if it's going for that cinematic flair, then maybe it could have used a little bit more of that. Because on the strategic side, so what I'm calling the strategic headspace, it's, like I was saying before, very tight. I mean, you don't have a lot of room to roam in that 3x3 grid. There's not a ton of strategic moves. And that's also compounded by the fact that in the cards tell you to move, but you can only move in a certain direction on the board. You can't just move wherever you want. It's not like a video game with movements on the D-pad and you just move. It's like, okay, if I want to be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere. In this game, if you don't get the card that specifically says you can move into a certain spot, you're not moving there. And that's always been frustrating to me as someone who just grew up with video games, grew up with movement on the D-pad, and just wants to move wherever he wants in the game. This is not that. I mean, this game makes movement into a resource to be managed. It's not bad. It is not bad. And I think this game kind of needs that just to kind of maintain that tight, everybody has a chance at every time. It's just about who can kind of eke out the win at the end. That's the motif this game is going for. And it delivers that well. I guess I just have a little bit of a question of whether everybody who could enjoy this game will enjoy this game. Maybe some people want a certain thing, like an exciting, swingy cinematic conflict, and they get kind of this more tighter, light strategy back and forth. So game is good. Like, this game is really good. I had a lot of fun with it. Like I said before, I played with it in therapy with teenagers. They enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So with that kind of provision that maybe this game could have used a little more of that cinematic, open-ended flair, for what this game gives you, that, tight, light strategy back and forth, asymmetric, the characters feel very different, very balanced. I think that what they're going for was an absolute success. So along those lines, I can definitely recommend Skulk Hollow. If you want to get that to the table for Halloween with a loved one, go ahead and do that. All right, let us get back to the Halloween core motif, being scared, feeling alone in that horror mindset. These next two games definitely are going for that. This next one is Lifeform. It was designed by Mark Chaplin and Tony Farrans, published by Hall & Nothing Productions. That is my friend Tristan Hall. We've become good friends at this point, so you guys know what that means. Bias alert. Woo, woo. Even with Keith Matika and Ed Varoff, those are good dudes. And I've had a chance to meet Keith and interact with a number of times in the podcast. He's been on the podcast. He's such a good dude. So yeah, I gotta admit, I want their games to do well and I want to enjoy their games. But I also want to put it out there as an unconscious bias thing. I want to be very, very careful that I'm not succumbing to that. I want to maintain a critical eye for you guys, and for our relationship, because you guys trust that what I'm giving it is the straight dope, and I'm not just like nudging a game that to be a little bit better than it is. I believe in Skulk Hollow. I have my observations about it, and the same thing about Lifeform. So putting it out there, do the best I can with it. If anybody wants to continue to comment at me, ENGN_podcast, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff we get into at the end of the episode. All right, what is Lifeform? Lifeform is, in essence, trying to be a shot at Alien, the board game. The first movie that was basically a horror movie. Sigourney Weaver is running around scared out of her mind. The gun does not work. And the alien is nigh indestructible. There are a couple of other games out there that are trying to do the same thing. I'm thinking of Nemesis in particular. I have not played Nemesis. Want to. Nemesis is a semi-co-op game. This one is a from the ground up one versus many game. That's what you're getting in the base box. So I'm actually going to review not that version of it. I have not played the one versus many. I've only taught it, so I know how it goes. However, I'm going to review the solo mode of Lifeform, which is in the expansion, The Dragon's Domain. That was a little bit of a thing because the solo expansion has a lot of components to it, and it ended up clocking in around $25. So it's like, oh my God, this game's expensive, and I have to buy a $25 expansion just to play it solo? Roar. It is what it is. I mean, the game was built ground up as a one versus many, and Tristan believes in solo and he did the best that he can. You are getting a very healthy solo experience, So I'm going to run through all that. The very basics of the multiplayer game is that most of the players are going to be on the same team, and you're going to be these miners that are frantically trying to escape the ship because it's been taken over by the alien. And as a player, you play two characters, and you very, very limited options. You don't have powers or anything like that. It's a horror game, so really you're just trying to stay alive. And everybody can have card play. So you play a card and you can move, you can gather a resource, you can collect some things. But for the most part, card play, do your thing, move on. The alien side, also cards. They have their own deck and their own symbol system that they use. For the most part, the alien is trying to corner the heroes. It has one main alien figure and also one or two kind of illusion alien figures. So it's trying to kind of bluff and cat and mouse corner type thing and, get one character alone and attack it with its real character and kind of divert the movement of the characters by using the bluff symbols and everything. So it's a very heady game. It's trying to make you guess back and forth, mechanically driven by cards. So does that feeling replicate in the solo? Sort of. It's very different, but they are still going for that. You're alone on a big old ship and you're being chased by something very, very nasty and powerful. It takes the bluffing part out of it. Obviously, you can't have a bluff. You don't want like an AI deck to bluff you. That'd be stupid. What it does, though, is it replaces the entire alien system with a deck of event cards, and the tension comes out of the event cards. So you are one character, and you are running around a giant ship. I probably should have led with this. This game has a massive board. It is huge. Think Eldritch Horror, but bigger. Eldritch Horror had about 40 spaces on that board. It's supposed to be like, it's spanning the entire world. This game has maybe double that, just in terms of rooms that you can go into and pathways that you can take. It's a very, very big board. So every time you move, and it's driven by cards when you move, when you go into a new room, you pull a card from the event deck. And that will generally give you some kind of flavor and give you a choice. So the lights are out in the room. How do you deal with it? Do you use an energy container to turn the lights on? Do you, wait a little bit and do something else? So option A, option B, it's a chance to kind of trade up resources and make progress that way. In that way, it reminds me of Unbroken. We've reviewed this Unbroken before. It's a game where you are going through a quote-unquote dungeon and you are making encounters card-based, and the cards present you with trades. I'm going to trade 2 meat for 3 wood. I'm going to trade 2 time for a treasure. I'm going to, trade. And this game is kind of that, where it gives you options of like, okay, I have resources. I'm going to trade them to proceed. In Unbroken, the trades were like, kind of even. This game, you're gathering resources and you're just spending them because it's a horror game. Once the resources are kind of born to die, and you're just trying to crawl. You're just trying to literally crawl to the finish line. Speaking of that, I do have a video playthrough of Lifeform. Yeah, I did a video. It's either on the One Stop Co-op Shop right now or it's soon to be, where I play through a full solo game. And I actually had the designer on a Skype call, so he was kind of talking me through what to do, what some of the design decisions were. I think it's the best way to play a game, is especially a newer, bigger game, is to have the designer kind of talk you through it. I literally crawled through to the very end, made it to the escape shuttle. It's supposed to be a 30-minute timer, so 30 turns. Made it there on turn 1. The timer was about to tick 0, and then I escaped. So that is exactly what this game is going for. Pretty obvious at this point, the thematic headspace of Lifeform is the thing that you're buying. This game desperately wants to put you in that mode of survival, horror, I'm being hunted, this alien is indestructible, and Lifeform does all sorts of things mechanically to try to put you in that place. It successfully does that, but it does that by throwing in a lot of rules and a lot of exceptions. This game has a giant rulebook. It's a all or nothing game. If you played any of their games, Gloom-Kill 4th or 1066, the rulebooks are always big. Tristan's very thorough. I don't know if that's the best way to go about approaching rules. It may explain everything, but it gives you the sense that the game is just heavy, laden down with rules. And there's just a lot of symbols, like there's a lot of things that you have to know. And there's a lot of exceptions that come into play. So you can go somewhere and have a mining laser. The mining laser used once a game, and it's like, okay, here's a little card full of rules, and figure that out. There is a robot that shows up, the mining robot, and it's like, okay, there's a what? what? If you're kind of struggling with it, it really feels like a giant pile of rules just entered into the space that is a whole different page that doesn't work the same as the rest of the game. And it just took me so long to learn everything. Like, there are tokens in this box that you may not find in the first couple of games. And then, let's say you're in game 5 and you're playing and you pull a card and it gives you a symbol. It's like, what? What's this symbol? I didn't know what this is. You have to look in the rule book. It's a whole new token. What? What do these rules do? Every rule here is in the service of increasing the theme. So the opposite of a lot of rules is streamlined. And, we always say we like streamlined games, but sometimes you can streamline the theme right out of a game. The game can be too smooth, too simple. And sometimes you need some of those rough patches in order to bring theme in. So this game does have some moments where it does streamline things, but for the most part, in the design decision, it felt like if there was a thematic choice to be made, 8 times out of 10, 4 times out of 5, however that works out, fractions, the designer made the decision to keep the theme in and add that little bit of overhead that you have to deal with. And if you're into the theme, that's okay. Anyone who's played Sentinels in a Multiverse will kind of know what I'm saying, where that game has a lot to track, a lot of numbers, a lot of exceptions, but if you're into it, it's not a big deal. It gives me that same sense. And that might be a terrible thing for people. It's like, there's too much to keep track of. That is definitely true. I can see somebody, especially people who have that criticism of Eldritch Horror, where it's like, I rolled a bunch of dice and I got a bunch of numbers and I did that for 3 hours and that was my game. That was not fun. There's definitely that here. It's big Ameritrashy thematic fun. There's no dice in Lifeform, but everything else of like player conflict and high luck. You might just get a card. You have no resources for it. You have to take like the terrible option. I have no resources, so like the alien progresses 3 and you lose all this time. And oh well, that's part of the horror theme. So that's the thematic headspace. It wants to put you in a space. It uses a lot of rules overhead to get you there. But if you do get there, I think it really does deliver a kind of pulse-pounding experience. Strategically, there's a lot of little decisions to be made. So, you can go different areas in the ship. You can do I want to save this resource? Do I want to trade it? Do I want to hold, I can trade this resource now, or in 5 turns, I'm looking down the corridor and I need this card for this other thing. Do I just take the hit now or save the card? Very tactical. You have to deal with what's in front of you. A little bit of strategy, holding on to things for different turns. Hand management is the flavor of the day in this game, both in the multiplayer and the solo. You don't want to get caught with 0 cards in your hand, so that strategy element is definitely there. So the hand management is there. The hand management is fun. So and on strategy level, I think this one delivers a decent punch. There's a healthy dose of luck, and I don't think you can have horror without luck. It's another way in which the game kind of like gives it to you and doesn't really apologize. I don't think you can get horror and theme without a decently healthy dose of luck. And you can mitigate the luck, but hey, it might happen. We'll see. The biggest luck part is whenever you encounter the alien, you pull chits from a bag, and the chits are either you stay alive or you die. Those are the chits. You begin with 5 stay alive chits and 1 die chit, and as you move along the game, you add more you're killed chits, and you might encounter the alien and pull out a you're killed chit, and the game is over. People don't like that. The design philosophy is don't encounter the alien. Do anything you can to not encounter this thing. It's dangerous. So you're not really supposed to pull from it very often. And when you do, you have to go into it as a pusher luck. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you really have to go through that pulling it in order to progress the game. That underscores the fact that there is a luck factor in here that some strategy players might not think is great at all. But it's thematic and it's adding to a mood. So that is what you're getting with Lifeform. I really dug it. I really like it. I'm keeping it around for the time being. I want to play it more. I'm going to play it on Halloween. This is probably the game I'm going to play on Halloween, actually. And go ahead and check out that video. Like I said, on the One Stop Co-op Shop, it'll either be up by the time you hear this or it'll be up soon afterwards. I had a hoot. Mark Chaplin had a hoot with me as well. So I can give a good recommendation if you want a heavy, lots of rules, lots of exceptions to overcome in service of theme. If you want kind of an Ameritrashy adventure, this is a game that will land right in that bullseye. That is Lifeform. All right, we have one more game to get to, which is Robinson Crusoe Expansion Mystery Tales. This review won't be as long because it's an expansion. I'm not going to go into chapter and verse of what Robinson Crusoe is all about. I have to be conscious these solo reviews can be a little bit long. I have all this elbow room. And I've gotten the feedback that sometimes I'll do these episodes where it's just me reviewing games, and not everybody enjoys that. I mean, I think people like the back and forth, the banter and everything. And I do too. Nobody has played these games that I know. And I wanted to kind of put them all in the same section. So here I am. And it also gives me a chance to kind of refine this idea of headspace. I know about 10 episodes ago, I referred to it as a left brain, right brain review. I'm tweaking that. I'm going to call it the headspace review, where I really want to drill down on the headspace that a game puts me in thematically and strategically. What kind of decisions am I making, and what kind of imagining what's happening in my imagination. Viewing games solo like this allows me to do that, and I'm hoping that as I refine this technique, I can bring it to when I'm reviewing games with other folks around. So thank you for bearing with me. I really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get back to it. Robinson Crusoe Mystery Tales. Is Robinson Crusoe with a horror sheen? So Mystery Tales offers kind of 2 things for the Robinson Crusoe player. The first thing is for any player of Robinson Crusoe. If you like this, and I really recommend definitely exploring putting this into your game. It is a horror mode that can be operative in any scenario whatsoever, even your base game scenarios. Even if you have Voyage of the Beagle, I think it works with Voyage of the Beagle, I'm not sure, definitely works with base game scenarios. What's happening? So in the base Robinson Crusoe, you have characters. You swap out those characters for the horror theme characters, which is basically a weaker character, but a couple of them. So you swap them in, they have limited health and a stat called Sanity, and the Sanity stat is like 3. It's like very, very small. Robinson Crusoe usually have like 10, 11 life. You have 3 Sanity or 4 Sanity, like really small. Along the way, you're going to lose Sanity, and if you lose all your Sanity, the character goes away, and you have a section of heroes that you bring in, so it's kind of like someone else steps up to continue the adventure. But that hero isn't gone. What is the main draw, thematic draw of Robinson Crusoe? Whenever something happens out of any deck, it goes into the event deck and can pop up later. So if you are building something and you are bit by a snake, the wound will fester, it will be shuffled into the event deck, and then the wound will be infected by the follow-up card. So they did that with the characters here, which I think is a really neat mechanical invention. I'll have a lot more to say about the theme and how it kind of plays out kind of after I finish the mechanical review. But the sense of lots of characters kind of scrabbling by their weaker horror theme, you have to have weak characters if you're going to really deliver on a horror theme. And they're so weak they can just die. And they're so weak they can go insane. If they die, they die. They're gone. But if they go insane, they go in the event deck, which is so cool. And thematic. So like, let's say you have like a priest, and the priest, doesn't make it. Now all of a sudden they're this deranged person. They think that you're a cultist, and they can, they leap out to attack you, and the card delivers some fun flavor text. Super fun, and a way to wrinkle up your base scenarios. So a lot of expansions for scenario-based games are just more scenarios. They don't liven up the old scenarios. This one livens up your old scenarios, gives you more bang for your buck. You're gathering wood in that very first resource to build the bonfire, but now you have this extra way to play it, and that's very, very cool. You can go through all your scenarios, like 10, 12 published ones, and then the ones in this expansion. It just breathes a lot of life into Robinson Crusoe. I really enjoyed it. The other thing you're getting is 5 scenarios wrapped up into a full campaign. The campaign is designed around the motif of the lost city of Z, and in that time period, the kind of gothic romantic horror period, Lovecraftian, this is when Lovecraft was doing his thing. So a lot of, new world discovery, and there'd be monsters over there. So you're going to get a little bit of that. You're going to be getting monsters, investigation, mystery. It doesn't want to be Cthulhu. You never see any of the Cthulhu mythos there, but it's Cthulhu. Come on now. The five scenario adventure feels a lot like an Arkham Files adventure, like the Arkham LCG or something like that, where it's this ongoing story. But it's within the Robinson Crusoe framework, which has some benefits and drawbacks. The only real drawback is that there's no real branching. It's a very tight system, so it has to keep you on the rails, where Arkham LCG can branch off a little bit. The strength of the story is that it integrates surprisingly well in the Robinson Crusoe mechanical chassis. So Robinson Crusoe is a Euro. It is a resource trading game. You're discovering and exploring, but when you discover and explore, you're getting resources and you're trading them for more resources. And it's at its heart a Euro, but then these cards and the tiles and everything else is what adds a theme. Here, they take some of the tile stuff, and there's these, if you know Robinson Crusoe, there's like this little tiki symbol. That symbol changes for every scenario. So what they've done here is they've taken that tiki symbol and just injected a whole bunch of more theme, more story. There's a storybook. You get to, whenever you hit a certain tile, you look up the number and you read the paragraph, just like a choose your own adventure. Robinson Crusoe plus choose your own adventure equals win. I enjoyed the story. Was it the best story I've ever played in the Arkham Files? Probably not, because it felt familiar. So you kind of know, you're not too surprised what happens to Colonel Fawcett. You're not too surprised at what happened to the desolate village. You can kind of see it all coming. So it's just some fun moments, but it's quite predictable in that way. So I wasn't like thrilled, but it was fun. It was fun. Like, it's Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is a great game. It's a very thematic, storytelling driven game. So I didn't mind that it wasn't original. It was fun. As a game, I only played through it once. I had a little bit of an easy time with it. I just know the engine and I know what has to happen. And Robinson Crusoe has this thing where, like, if you have a scenario and it's a building scenario, most of your actions are building, and then you just have to do stuff in service of the building and know when to push your luck and use one chit and when to actually build the thing that you need to. It felt a little bit easier. It didn't feel like as, especially except for the second scenario, which was a little bit lethal. The rest of them kind of weren't for me. I have to play through it again. I might just get murdered going through a second time. But I found each individual scenario a little bit mechanically easier than the base scenarios, the standalone scenarios. All right, so final verdict, horror mode. Excellent. Highly, highly recommended if you already love Robinson Crusoe and you want to jazz up the experience of those familiar scenarios and play through more of them. The campaign, fun. Robinson Crusoe is fun. 5 games of Robinson Crusoe that carry forward one to the other are fun. And it has that Cthulhu mythos horror sheen to it, which felt a little bit worn and familiar for me, but I still had a really, really great time. And it had a decent mechanical climax. So I'll say that as well. At the end, the story ended very well, which is something that's a little bit difficult for these campaign games. Oftentimes the climax kind of falls flat. This one I was satisfied. I enjoyed that. So overall, positive recommendation for Robinson Crusoe Mystery Tales. At this point, I'm going to conclude the actual gaming content of the episode. If you enjoyed that, thank you so much for listening. And if you want to kind of pass on some of my comments about personal chats, mental health, all the stuff that I like to get into in my personal life and I put into the podcast, you're good here. So until next week, this is Jason signing off. Later, everybody. All right, we're back. Everybody here? Everybody who doesn't want to be here is gone? Who doesn't want to listen to personal mental health, my stuff? Good. All right. So, yes, I am back. I sound a little bit different. I'm actually recording this in my kitchen as opposed to my fabulous recording studio. Anyway, two very, very quick things before we go on to the conversation with Thomas Grogan. First of all, when it came to Robinson Crusoe Mystery Tales, didn't mention this in the body of the review, but I think it bears pointing out right now. And anything Arkham Files, they're just always talking about like dreams and people going insane, nightmares, trauma and everything. That's kind of a rough one for me to play thematically because I'm a psychotherapist and I kind of work with these people. I work with people who suffer from trauma. I work with people who suffer from delusions and all this other stuff. Like there may be some people who are actually listening to this episode right now who are struggling with that kind of thing. And Arkham Files and this game and other games tend to kind of trivialize it. Like, you get a card and you are suffering delusion and madness right now, but then you resolve it and then you move on to the next card, which tells you something else. It just feels very trivial to something that's pretty serious. So wanted to just kind of put it out there, just asking these designers, these writers to try to come up with something a little bit different, a different way of treating. I understand that people losing sanity and having different things happen could be a cool mechanism, but I think it goes a little bit too far and strays into you have nightmares and now it's basically like making a nightmare a status condition as opposed to something that really people struggle with, especially if you're recovering from trauma. So please please look at that. That's all. I don't know what can be done in the game space to treat that more respectfully, but please look and someone come up with a different way to approach that. Anyway, so that's number one. Number two is a context for my discussion with Tom Grogan. So as we mentioned in the episode, he did share this on a previous episode of his podcast, the Mega Meeple, his own struggles with mental health and all that kind of thing. So I wanted to have him on and have a discussion, and not just to kind of be in misery. I think that's the biggest thing I want to avoid when it comes to these conversations. It's just like, let's talk about depression and, in his case, homelessness and medical issues and loneliness and all that kind of stuff. It's about that and diving into that, but also kind of a redemption after that. It's positive at the end of the day, and gaming has a lot to do with that positivity. So, just wanted to warm you guys up and talk about where this conversation will go. It gets a little bit long. I don't apologize for that because I give people the space to talk about whatever they want and however long they want. Your ears did not deceive you. That is a baby in the background. Real life doesn't stop. So here's my conversation with the Mega Meeple. Thank you for listening. Hey everybody, I am back, and I am joined this week by a friend of mine who reached out to me over on the board game interwebs a couple of episodes ago, having conversations, chats, I kind of call them life chats with various people in the board gaming verse, talking about some of the stuff that goes on kind of behind the box, behind the table, so to speak. Getting to know some of us as real people. And, this person reached out to me. It's like, wow, that's a very, very cool thing. Let's, talk about that a little bit. Something a little bit different. So, without further ado, I wanted to talk about, this man is a fellow Dice Tower contributor. He also has his own podcast, which is called the Mega Meeple. I have appeared on that show. Not really sure when we're going to coordinate releases and everything, but hopefully by the time this one airs, my Mega Meeple appearance will be appearing as well. But this is Tom Grogan. Welcome to the show for the first time.
Hey, Jason, how you doing? And or maybe I should say greetings. Yeah, so that's.
Hey, do whatever you want, my man. Do whatever you want.
That's what people expect. It's like your like your signature is, yo, my peoples, what's up? So.
Yo, my peoples. Like it's almost like that's my on, so to speak. So once I say that, like it's not like I'm fake, but there's definitely a little bit of an act, like a persona.
Right,
it's like,
right.
Hey, and then after that final later, everybody is like, oh,
okay. Yes, this is the official the podcast is officially started. We're okay. This is where we're getting, and we're just moving on from here. So.
We're moving on from here. We're having a good time. However, one part of the things that I wanted to encourage with, just live chats is, there were real people. We're real people. We have struggles. We have triumphs. We have tragedies. So yeah, I don't want to get too far into it. You actually set the pace for one of the episode that I did where I talked about my own mental health struggles. Like you did that a couple of years ago. This was your episode 17 of the Mega Meeple, where you talk a little bit about your, background and some of the things that you go through and how gaming has kind of helped you in your life. So I wanted to have you on to kind of follow up on that conversation. First of all, to point my listeners to this podcast, Mega Meeple, very fun. It is not officially on the Dice Tower, so there is a little bit of blue language.
Right.
So
and
I enjoy that a little bit
because I just started doing that, and going into my third year. I was strictly family friendly for the first 2 years of doing that, and I was like, what? I think I'm gonna turn off the filters. My third year doing it, and it's wild because since I've done that, my download numbers just go zing.
Boom!
Yes. Darn! Why didn't I do this way back earlier?
Adult content. We're dying for it, and I'm still on the Dice Tower Network, so the muzzle is still on me. But I definitely appreciate a different voice, a different perspective. But anyway, as we were saying, you definitely have a story, and you have some things that you kind of bring in terms of your personal stuff. So maybe without going into too much detail, because again, listen to the episode. It's a very, very good episode. Talk a little bit about what you're going through and how games have kind of helped you through some stuff.
Yes, thank you. Well, I give you for just the sense of continuity, give you like a Reader's Digest version of the lead up story. And again, I cover this in quite a bit of detail in my one episode, so 17. But I was always growing up. I wasn't really into board games. I remember doing the whole Monopoly and Trouble and Chutes and Ladder, that type of thing. I was more into video games. So that was just something that I could do on my own, because I'm very much an introvert. Just kind of keep it to myself type of thing. I mean, I like people. I like people to be around me, but I don't have the desire or the need to have people around me every single waking moment. I mean, I need to go off somewhere and recharge batteries. And
yeah, like I always say about introversion, it's not about I like people, I don't like people. It's not about that. It's about what takes me energy. Yeah. There are some people who get energy from hanging out with people. And I think both of you and I are not those people.
Yeah, my energy gets sucked out of me.
Yeah. I was like, I have this iPhone 6 and like I take it off the charger and I'm already at 56%. That's how I feel in certain social situations. Like, just put me in a social situation, I'm at 56% battery before I even like walk in the door.
uh,
So yeah, I'm sorry
but
that you were saying.
yeah, and I remember I actually was introduced to board games earlier than I kind of really got interested. It was because here in the Charlotte area, we have like 2 or 3 different gaming groups of meetups that meet in certain area at different places each month. And I remember going to one, and I can't even remember the games but it wasn't like the mass market stuff. It was games that I've never heard of and stuff. And so I think if I would remember some of the games I played back then, I would be, oh, okay, yeah, I all right. So that's what that was. But at that point, it was like I had no interest in board games. It was like, okay, this is sort of like the an offshoot from some D&D stuff, and I grew up in a circle that was part of the whole satanic panic thing, where it's like, okay, portal to hell, and
Right.
if you even if you even watch the movie The Exorcist, you open yourself up to demon possession and stuff like that. So so it was just something that other people was involved with, and I wasn't. I guess I wasn't permitted to dabble into that. And now, nowadays it's like, no, these guys are kind of cool. So,
Yeah, I know, right?
but yeah, I think what started it all was I'd just gotten a job at the Army Reserve Center here in Charlotte in their network security department, and because I'd went to college, got a degree in computer science, got specialized training in network security and digital forensics, because that was career-wise, that was the most logical step for me to go in, because for about 7 or 8 years prior to that, I was in forensics with forgery detections and anything had to do with question documents and handwriting, signature identifications and stuff like that. But as time went on, a lot of companies was going paperless, and I was like, well, I don't know how much longer this ink to paper thing's going to be around. And after I got a few lawyers and law firms calling me saying, well, we don't have a hard copy, but we want you to find out if such and such of a file on a computer was altered, or so like, well, I need to go back to school. So I went back to college, got a degree in computer science, went for specialized training in digital forensics, and as a lot of people are told to do, just pay your dues in a sense. So I worked at a help desk. I actually worked for about 2 years at at the Mecklenburg County Bar Association. So it was neat that I was able to work IT support for the support outlet that helps license and registers all the lawyers in Mecklenburg County. And then at a point when I got the job at the Army Reserve, it was like, okay, this is my dream job. Because and I had the job for about 2 weeks, got started on the whole FBI background check, security clearance, and it was like, okay, this is going to be. I don't know how long I was, because at the time it was a contract job. I said, well, if I could at least get the security clearance, that will open the door to so many other things that I wanted to do. Because if people don't know, it's like a security clearance it's not one of those things that you could apply for. It's like, hey, I want to, you have to be you have to be employed by a government or a law enforcement agency that, in a sense, sponsors you to be able to get the process done. So I was there for about 2 weeks, got the process started with the FBI with the fingerprinting and all that stuff, and it was like the late January of 2014, and I remember I'd gotten sick, and I thought, well, I figured it was just sinuses, because I've had sinuses crap before, so I was just taking EOTCs and drinking plenty of fluids. So I think the second or third day that I was sick, I got up and I went to the kitchen to get something to drink, and I never made it. I just passed out, and I vaguely remember the guy I was living with at the time take me to the emergency room. And it seemed like they said something about, well, your lungs sounds like your lungs are being filling up with fluid, or to go down and get some x-rays with you. And I kind of vaguely remember them wheeling me down to the x-ray room, and then that's all I remember. And then I had, at least from my perspective, I had a really screwed up dream. But the thing is, the brain, it's fascinating how the brain works, because even though I was seeing all this stuff and doing all this stuff that was really bizarre, in my mind's eye, my brain was accepting it as something that was actually happening. And I could still recall what I dreamt about as clearly as things that I remembered doing last week. And we're talking I'm like 5 years removed. And so I wake up. At one point, I do wake up in the hospital, and I have a tube sticking out of my throat. My right arm is, from the elbow down, is dead. My left hand is dead, and I can't feel my legs. And I'm so weak I can't even sit up in bed. As I found out a few, I guess, days or weeks later, that I had my body had been in a coma for just shy of 6 weeks. And when I woke up, the apartment that I was living at was gone. The guy that was there moved out. So I think I only talked to him once or twice after that. But yeah, after a while he just kind of ghosted me. But yeah, the job was gone. The apartment was gone. Everything. All I had was what was able to be packed up in boxes and put in storage. Everything else is gone. And I remember once I was released from ICU, I went to a nursing home where they also had physical and occupational therapy. And so I woke up in middle of March. By the end of March, I went over to the nursing home, and I pretty much spent the rest of that year, 2014, learning how to walk all over again. And so so that was 2014. So what we're 2019, 5 years removed. Yeah. So basically, I found out later that I had pneumonia and the flu at the same time, and my body just shut down. And now And I gotta say, uh, this is like a bit of a tangent. People have asked me, "Is like, well, what are you when you're in a coma? Are you able to hear?" No, sorry, sorry. I hate to burst your bubble, but when I don't know why medical staff tell people it's like, well, yeah, talk to him. He could hear you. They could hear you. No, we can't hear a thing. We can't hear a thing. We're dreaming. It's basically like we're so. Uh, it's funny because afterwards, when I was at the homeless shelter in the community room, they were watching Rocky, and there's that scene where Adrian's in hospital, so Rocky goes and reads that book to her at her side of her bed, hospital bed, and I remember saying, he's going to have to read that book all over again when she wakes up. She's not able to hear the whole anything. But yeah, but it was just, and it's weird, just the bizarro world that my mind kind of, things I've seen, movies I've seen, places I've been, people that I haven't seen in years, people that's been dead for years. Just the brain is just picking off memories and just kind of mushing them together in this really weird world. And it was very linear. It wasn't very. It was like, okay, I do something and I would this would happen, or I go here and this would happen. So I literally thought that as this was all going on, that I was, I was actually living these things, regardless of how bizarre it was. My mind was still accepting it as, okay, this is really happening. And, like for one thing is, I thought one of the nurses was trying to. This is how some of my brain works. When it's left to its own devices and no filters. I was convinced the nurse was trying to kill me.
Wow.
So, they the police were after me, but one police officer came in. I had were those blood pressure cuffs on. I was still in the hospital at this point in the dream, and this police officer came in and stuck an envelope inside the blood pressure cuff and says, "Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right." And that's it. And then, there was a football game, but all these terrorists was up on the top, lights area of the stadium and started shooting people. And then I went to the dentist to get my teeth clean, but instead of cleaning my teeth, they amputated my legs. And then I went to a research facility, sort of like a RoboCop style medical research facility, and they gave me motorcycle wheels for legs.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you became a cyborg. Great.
And then the Russians and the Chinese invaded. So when I actually woke up. Actually physically woke up in the ICU. It was just as I was riding around my motorcycle legs with a sword and a shotgun, and I was killing Russians and Chinese and stuff like that. And I really thought that when I woke up that I got wounded on the battlefield, and that's why I was in a hospital. And then I was genuinely disappointed when I fell down on my leg. It was like, oh, where's my motorcycle wheels? I want my motorcycle wheels back. And I was like, I got my. So yeah, so I basically went to a homeless shelter, nursing home first. Homeless shelter was next. Because I was basically homeless at that point. So I went to a nursing home. I learned how to walk again. Got a majority of the feeling in my left hand back. I got a little bit in my right arm. because from the elbow down is nerve damage is from for what the doctor says pretty much permanent. But they still tell me it's like, well, because I have to. Anytime I'm sleeping, I have to wear a brace on it, so just prevent my hand from, with all the tossing and turning, I might wind up bending my hand backward or in some weird position and not know it. So I have to wear a brace for that. But during the day, it's like, well, try to do what you can without the brace to try to keep the muscles at least, from atrophy. But no feeling in the right arm, no feeling in my feet. So I have to walk around with a cane now because technically I can't feel the ground. So I walk around with a cane more out of stability than anything else. So when I was spent almost, I guess, 8 or 9 months at the nursing home, learn how to walk again. So once they were able to release me from there, I really didn't have any place to go. My family up at Pittsburgh basically told the doctor that they didn't want to have anything to do with me. They didn't care whether I lived or died. I was pretty much, yes. So I went to a homeless shelter, and it's that I would equate to jail. The amount of verbal and emotional abuse that was happening there and this was one of those places that was specifically geared towards people getting out of the hospital or getting coming out of a serious sickness or surgery that did not have family or friends to stay with or to move to. They could come here and stay rent-free and, food and everything provided. But just the amount of abuse that everybody went through under that is like, wow, God, it's like if I don't have a heart attack, I'm getting ready to slip my wrists, because this place is so freaking depressing and antagonistic.
And you mentioned before how like these places can feel like jails. I mean, I've worked in a couple of these. Yeah. I mean, you don't realize, but they do treat people like if they aren't managed every single minute of every day, or like, you log in, you log out, you check you can't even, leave without checking in 7 different places and everything. They really just like, the guys haven't done anything. Like, most people haven't done anything, but they're treated like criminals anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. We had, there was a white line, painted in the parking lot that would lead out to the driveway. And basically we were told, you cross that white line, you may as well keep on going because you're not coming back. So good, you cross that white line, you better have somebody waiting for you on the other end because, good luck to you. You're on your own at that point. And it almost came like a joke to some of us. I was, hey, we crossed that white line, the collar around our neck is going to explode, so.
It's unbelievable. And I can see it. I can see, people like you end up at a place like that. Just kind of talk about a little bit my background. I've never been there, but I've volunteered places, either at a facility or a church or something. And like it's you would think like in that particular area where they haven't done anything, people are down on their luck, that'd be the place for compassion and that'd be the place for empathy. And it's often not, Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually met during that time. I met a couple that they were if I tell you how I met them or what the connection was, that would lead me down to a whole new other tangent. So just suffice to say that we crossed paths and we got to be good friends. So at one point, the husband contacted me and said, listen, we might have something for you. He said, our daughter is going off to college, and we're, not using her bedroom. So, we could have you, if you want, you could stay here with us. Because the disability claim, has already been filed. So we were waiting for that to happen. That was a joke. Another, but they said, yeah, you just stay with us. So that's what I did, and I moved in with them, stayed in their daughter's room, and I lived with them for 2.5 years, waiting for my disability hearing to get scheduled. And so at the beginning, it was like, I pretty much stayed in the room. I didn't. I think at first I didn't want to bother them because it was like, this is their house. Again, I'm kind of in limbo here. I don't have any place to settle into. This is not my place. This is their house. So I'll leave them alone, and so I just pretty much just isolated myself in my room, and watched YouTube videos or whatever, listen to the podcast, just whatever to bide my time. But as at that point, I was just coming out of the whole deal with the homeless shelter. It was like, what? I really wish that I didn't survive that coma. I mean, love the medical science profession. They helped maintain me when I was in the coma. They helped get me out of the coma. They helped me, learn to walk as well. At that point, I was still on the not a wheelchair, but one of those walkers. Still using one of those. But at that point, it's like, what? I wish I would have just died in that coma, because I have nothing. Everything I worked for, everything I've given, pursuit to, I went to I went to college, and I graduated top class. I graduated with a perfect GPA. And at my age, learning going back to college and learning a new field to study, and graduating, summa cum laude, that was quite. So although I'm looking back on that, it's like all that time was wasted, because now I literally have nothing. I have a few clothes that I have in a suitcase. I have whatever stuff that they were able to, box up and put in storage that my friend was providing, and I'm waiting week in and week out for almost 3 years for just not even to get an approval, just to get a hearing with social services disability. And so I think the couple was getting kind of concerned, me spending so much time, because even when I would go out and try to get some exercise, I'd walk up to the store and stuff like that, and walk back just to try to keep my my legs going and stay in the energy level up. But I remember at times when I had to cross over traffic or at a crosswalk, it's like, what? I'm all by myself here. There's no one with me. I could just step right out into traffic right now, and there's not anybody here to pull me back. I could do it right now. And that was a time where it's like, I need help. So I was able to get a hold of a psychotherapist, that luckily charged on a sliding scale. So the fact that I was not getting any income whatsoever, she was able to I was able to meet with her once a week, free of charge. And so, yeah, because once you go through stuff like that, your mind, I know I'm kind of weird to begin with, but when you go through something like that, your brain gets effed up pretty good. So, but and I'm still I'm to this day, like 5 years removed, I'm still seeing her. Although we cut back, I'm only seeing her once every 2 weeks. But yeah, it's still an ongoing thing. So, but and as fate would have it, the couple that I was staying with, both of them was into board games. The husband was big into Savage Worlds. The wife was big into Pathfinder, and then they both had their own. They probably still do have their own dedicated shelf of board games. So I remember there was one. I'd heard groups of people out in their dining area before, and I'm just in my room, staying to myself, and they'll be laughing, talking and hooping it up and stuff. But there was one time that his name is Richard, the husband. He comes back. He says it was a Saturday. He said, "Listen, Tom, I'm testing a game that I'm doing at a local con here pretty soon, and testing this scenario out, and we're short some people. You wanna come out and play with our game group?" And I don't know why, because what it's like, people start to isolate themselves. It's like, even though it's like, okay, well, yeah, I really wish people would reach out to me, and then when they do, it's like, no, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason, and I actually thinking back, I can't really remember why or what. I think it was like, why the hell not? It's like I'm not going anywhere. I have nothing else to do. Yeah, it could be fun. Yeah, I'll give it a try, sure. So I went out, and I'm still braced on my right arm, walking out in a walker, and but sitting down, we were playing a game of I think of Savage Worlds, and I to show how thick I was, then I was like, he gave out these character sheets. He said, well, this one's kind of straightforward, not a whole lot to it. This might be a good one for you to play. And I'm looking at it, there's like, strength, dexterity, vigor, and D6, D12, it's like, I had no idea. I had no idea what the D numbers were. That's how removed I was of any knowledge of any. Even though I've heard and seen people play D, I never knew. I didn't even know what the D in front of the number meant. But that first time, it was neat because, and again, it was like, coming from number one, introvert, number two, being isolated and isolating myself, it took me a few sessions to really warm up to the gameplay, so to speak. But what really kept me coming back and saying, I kind of enjoyed, I really enjoyed that. I'd like to do that again. Yeah, let me know when you're having your friends over again, and if there's room for me to play. Is the fact that, in spite of this brace on my right arm, and me walking in there and with a walker, that I wasn't viewed as being broken. I wasn't a broken person. I wasn't. I mean, it was obviously. I'm sure if they had a pair of eyes, they could see I'm disabled, but they didn't acknowledge that. They didn't treat me like that. They didn't treat me something lesser than. Hey, even for a person who's never played an RPG before, that didn't know what the heck the D12 meant, they still accepted me, welcomed me into their group, and took time to explain to me, okay, this is all right. Because at first it was like, I don't know how to role play. I don't feel comfortable. Just tell me what dice I need to roll. Who am I attacking? What die do I roll? What does that mean? Did I win? That type of thing. So that's pretty much my approach to it. But they took the time to explain everything to me, and in such a way that they didn't equate my physical disability with a mental disability. So they didn't talk down to me either. So it was like I was just a regular person, and as I later on, as I got more involved in RPGs, I could look back on that and appreciate just how what they did, because I see that once you get a certain group together to play an RPG, and all of a sudden somebody new comes in, or some, can I bring my friend? And there's almost this, okay, what kind of person is this? Are they going to play well with others? And that type of thing. But I mean, if they had any hesitation when Richard invited me to play with him that one night, that it wasn't known to me, but they talked to me. They didn't talk down to me, and they welcomed me and into their group, and I mean, here we are. What the number of years later, 3 or so years later, and I'd say half of those people are still friends. I still play games with them to this day.
That is awesome. I love that. Like, I love it on so many levels. I love it as an RPG. I'm an RPG guy. I was an RPG guy since high school. Playing D&D, playing Palladium. Savage was a little bit later in my RPG thing, but like that's kind of what got me through too. Like when I was first going through my depression, I got into Dungeons and Dragons. And just what you said, like I'm not a broken person in this alternate world. I'm whole. Right. Like, and I'm not only am I whole, I'm awesome. I can, and I mean, I was a cleric. So like I can heal the world, and I can do this, I can do all this other great stuff. I can act like an idiot and not be stigmatized and whatever. And that's all I wanted to do. Is like I want the freedom to act like an idiot, but like within that kind of magic circle, safe space, and.
Right.
And then, at that, like kind of leading to board games and, kind of the split between board games and RPGs, the line being blurry and getting blurry depending on the game you're playing. I mean, I love it, and I guess like, going from that initial experience to now, it's like, now look at you, podcast, hey, all these interviews, like you've interviewed, like, I'm looking, if you look at the Mega Meeple, your list, I mean, like you've interviewed all these people, Jamie Stegmaier, Michael Coe from Game of Games, and Paul Grogan. There's all these people. It's like, wow, this start, like look where you are then and look where you are now because of gaming. I don't want to get too rah-rah about it, but that's awesome. It really is.
That's why, and thank you, because I had at some point I had to accept the fact that, all right, for physically, for all intents and purposes, I'm retired. In fact, the wild thing when SSI finally did schedule my hearing, I went in with my lawyer, and of course they it was weird because they had to set up through video. So there was this judge, or I think in Knoxville, so here I am in Charlotte, and we're like, Comcasting or something to this, the judge's quarters or chambers in Knoxville, and the judge had an HR expert that was on their payroll in a sense, and it was their job to basically say, all right, based on such and such job description, can someone with my physical limitations perform these jobs based on these job descriptions? So when it came to that, the judge listed all the things that my doctors reported, and basically asked their expert, says, in your expert opinion, could someone with these limitations perform these jobs? And their expert said, no, he can't. It is like, yeah. So at that point, and I remember when the judge finally said, okay, I'm going to approve your disability claim, I just started crying because I've waited almost 3 years for just something, because I had already been denied twice at that point via the mail, and so I just started crying. So it was when I heard that their experts say that and basically confirm what I've been saying, what my doctor, the half a dozen doctors I need to see, has been saying. It was a double-edged sword, because it was like, yes, we're right. I am disabled. On the other side of the coin, it's like, yeah, I am disabled. Even they agree with me that I can't do this anymore. So it was like, all right, so it took me a while. I mean, I don't even know how long, but it took me a while to admit to my therapist, like, yeah, I think for all intents and purposes, I need to accept that I am retired. And I never got that, security clearance from the government. I never got to, have my digital forensics career, launch off, and had a successful, question document career. But I was really looking forward to doing the computer stuff. That never happened. So it was like, so I tried to look at it on the bright side. I was like, okay, well, at the time I'm like, 51. I'm 53 now. So it's like, well, at least I have enough of my mind and at least part of my body that is intact enough for me to enjoy my retirement. So I was like, well, okay, so what do I do? I think through and again through Richard and his wife Karen, I got that's where I got introduced to the Dice Tower and Watch It Played and stuff like that. So I've been watching all these YouTube videos of games, and it's funny because I had all those weeks and months that I was waiting for my disability to get approved. I would be watching these videos. I was like, okay, this game is this, and I was basically doing research. So it was like, so when that official that first check came in, that was all retrograde. It was like 3 years worth of disability withheld, and they all get it in that first 2 or 3 months. I was like, okay, so I know exactly what games I want.
Christmas time.
So I went to my local game store, and I swear I bought at least $600 worth of games. And it was like, I want this. Do you have this? Yeah, I want that. I want that. It's like, okay, thanks. You guys could close early today. So that was basically what what started. And Dan's like, well, you know what? And I said this in my very first episode of the podcast. Like, look, I'm retired. I'm old. I'm bored. I've got a lot of time on my hands. What do I want to do? So one of the things I like talking about is board games or gaming in general. So I started that. So, and then that now just recently is like, okay, well now if I wasn't busy enough, I started another YouTube channel doing movie reviews of horror movies. And in fact, I just finished up an interview with my very first guest for the channel just before coming on with you here tonight. But thinking back, my very first guest for the podcast was Jamie Stegmeyer. And I thought to myself, well, all right. So I sat down. I was like, well, who do I want to have? Do I want to have guests? Okay, well, yeah. Who would I want to have on it? So I made a list, and maybe I was just too inexperienced in it because I was pretty much just teaching myself as I went, which I guess is evidence of how poor the audio quality in those early episodes are. If you listen, I was like, so I'll just send them an email. So I'd go. I figure if they didn't want to get contacted, then they shouldn't have a contact us page on their website. So I just go to Stonemeyer Games website or somebody to contact us. Okay, and that was it. And then I was like, okay, well, that was easy. Let's go down the line, and then so I'd be checking out Kickstarter on what games are being done there. It's like, okay, and contacting them and see if they want to talk about their games.
The answer is yes, they want to talk about their games.
Yeah. So that after not too long, that became the style of the podcast. I talk about at the beginning, talk about what I'm doing or something going on at the time, and then the second half was interviewing the guest. So, and now I'm just sort of like I don't know. I'm a lot more free flowing in the. So just a warning to your audience: and anything labeled as season 3, that's when I turn the filter off. So, and anything prior than that is family friendly. But after season 3, episode 1, the training wheels are taken off.
All right, so that was as good an introduction to your podcast as you could give. If you want, again, if you want to look for Thomas Grogan, he is the Mega Meeple. You can find him all over the interwebs. He's a consistent poster. He has his own Facebook group and posting in the Dice Tower and a couple other Facebook groups. Very available. A really inspiring story, my friend. We are about to get, speaking of those, those blue podcasts, we're about to shift over to your show over there. Looking forward to that. But thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you guys having me on.